Episode 52. We have tactic superstar coach and fellow competitor Lynsey Martin on the show. Lynsey came back on our show, episode 9, which was probably like a year and a half ago, I think, roundabouts. Lynsey's our longest standing coach. We've had her on the team since I think May 2020.
2020.
Yeah. Super good coach, awesome athlete, competes in CrossFit.
Decent person.
And she's all right. We like her.
Don't talk yet.
Shut up. Ran track and field in university. Dabbled in some bodybuilding. Discovered CrossFit. Discovered us. And we're awesome. And here we are. One big happy family, part of the family. So welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
We're recording from our house this time. You guys are sitting on the podcast couch, which is a really famous piece of furniture at this point.
It's really not so bad.
No,
Like,
I mean, it needs
it
a
wouldn't be
pilot.
great for lounging, watching TV, though. Like,
But
you
I'm
wouldn't
good
Netflix
sitting
and
here.
chill
Yeah.
with this couch.
Yeah, sometimes I think about putting a TV in this room, and then I sit on that couch, and I'm like, nope, never mind. This is
It's like the
What a
couch you go and
waste.
sit on if you need something comfortable but still need to stay awake.
Yeah, that's smart.
yeah.
Yeah,
if-
it's not
if
comfortable
you-
enough to fall asleep.
If someone they're like, you know what, you can stay at my house. I have a couch you can sleep on. Don't worry. And you showed up to their
That
house.
would
and
be
it's
so
couch.
rude.
On this.
Yeah, it's like
That'd be hard.
I mean, the floor works too. You have a
Yeah.
comforter, I'll just put it on the floor. It's not bad for the way that we use it though.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
It's been a little while and a whole season of CrossFit since we talked, so I think it would be cool to just kind of update everybody on what you've been up to and what's new in life and kind of how things are going and what's coming up for you.
Sure. Yeah, from a CrossFit point of view, I guess since I talked to you guys, I did the Open, obviously did some kind of like local competitions when I could. COVID kind of shut those all down, but I think there's been a few since then that I've done. Went through the Open fresh off of a weird kind of knee injury, so wasn't even going to do the Open. Was actually told not to do it, but our coach Michael and I discussed it and decided that we would just see how it went. And obviously kind of the way that it was set up this year, going from the Open to quarterfinals was like, I'm not going to say it like easy to make it, but like a large percentage of people made it. So quite a few of us, I was training at Rise at the time, made it through to quarterfinals. And so knee was actually starting to feel better through the Open and into quarterfinals. So, and then quarterfinals went okay. I finished, I think like 133rd or something in North America. So missed the cutoff for semifinals by, I think it was 13 places. So I think they took the top 120. So I missed it by a bit. So that was tough. I was definitely disappointed to be that close and not make it. And I remember I kind of talked to you guys and Meredith was like, don't cut yourself out yet. And I was like, yeah, whatever. I'm done. Like 13 is a lot of places. And then, I actually got COVID right after quarterfinals. So like the timing of it was actually quite nice. Cause I think if I had known that I had qualified for semifinals and then I got COVID, that, it would have been like much more stressful. So I found out as I was kind of like on the other side of being sick that enough people had, I guess, rejected their invites that I got a backfill spot. So I was like, Kate, I guess it's time. So definitely, I took like the 2 full weeks off of training because I was just too sick. And then we had to ease back into it. So like really, like my PM sessions were go for a 30-minute walk outside for I think 1 to 2 weeks. And then, just kind of tried to ramp it up and like tried to do my best at semifinals. And I mean, like the experience was cool. It was still virtual. So some of them were were in person. I did Atlas Games, which was still virtual at the time. And yeah, I mean, I gave it my best shot,
Yeah.
you know. I did what I could. I wouldn't say that I like blame COVID for how I did. I think that was probably where I was at with my fitness. I think I finished 21st or 22nd or
Yeah.
something. You guys, well, Meredith did one of the workouts with me, which is
Gretel.
yeah, we did Gretel together, which was really fun. It was definitely tough to like get amped up to do those completely by yourself. I will say that. I definitely prefer the in-person competition.
Mhm.
So I really want to make it back this year and hopefully just like straight up qualify. Obviously, there's going to be more people competing and stuff, hopefully. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, that was like kind of my CrossFit
Yeah.
thing. Like the biggest thing that I've been up to. I did recently do the Wadapalooza qualifiers and they went terribly.
The Wadapalooza qualifiers have always gone terribly for
Really?
me. Yeah.
That's comforting, actually.
There was one time where I like did it and I didn't qualify, so I just like emailed them and was like, "Can I have a spot?" It was right after the games and they were like, "Yeah, sure."
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I unfortunately don't have that pull, so I couldn't do that.
I mean, you could give it a go. Just see what happens.
Miami's nothing special.
It's actually like it's really fun. I always get sick after that competition. It's like it's not necessarily like the best athlete experience. It is
Okay.
one of the best spectator experiences.
When you're competing, it's fine. It's fun because you're like on the stage. But yeah, like you're outside all day and stuff. It can be difficult and it's
Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah.
So you're really not missing
Yeah, I'm not
nothing.
missing that.
No, it's
We've considered doing going back and doing team of 3 with you.
Yeah, I would
Do a
that.
tactic team.
I think
That'd
if
be
Granite
so fun.
Games announces team of 3 for a division this year, I might consider coming out of retirement to
That
do
would
that.
be
Would you
really
be
fun.
down?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would be really
100%.
fun.
Yeah, I'd train for that.
Tactic can
Yeah.
pay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be a
It's a
business
business.
expense.
Yeah, the in-person competition's just so different from virtual.
Yeah.
Because there is an element to this sport where, I mean, obviously, like you can only do what you can do on events, but you can react to other people on the floor, and you know when you visually see someone getting no repped or having a hard time, like you can step up and take advantage of that, and that's just kind of gone with online, and it's like that's part of the reason I really don't like online for semifinal like stage is
Yeah.
it takes away.
It's inherently unfair.
Yeah.
Also because some people have other people to go against.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you only had that opportunity really for one of
one
the events
workout.
and you were against Meredith who
Yep.
I mean, I
she
knew
did
I-
push you.
She did.
A little
for sure
bit.
She did.
It's
yeah.
hard to go into a 10-round workout at a 7-round pace
Yeah.
and to know that
and hold on.
like no you're gonna do that. I was like, hey, I know I have 7 rounds in me at this phase.
Yeah.
I know for like 100% I can't do 10,
Yeah.
but we'll just do 7 and then I'll finish because I have to. But that was horrible. That was like one of the worst. I have not done anything that intense in I don't know, a year.
Yeah.
10
Maybe
rounds,
after that?
3 clean and jerks, 3 burpees.
Over the bar,
Yeah.
yeah.
Brutal.
You basically like the burpees you don't stand up. The clean and jerks are I mean, they're fast clean and jerks.
You're like literally dizzy going around
Yeah.
in it. Like I never know. Well, I've only done it I think twice, but like I didn't know what round I was on ever. Like I needed the person judging me to like tell me what I was doing because
Yeah.
I would have just like kept going. 'Cause
Yeah.
I was just like
They're like, no, you're
your
done.
brain is just like gone.
Yeah.
Like dizzy.
It takes like all of your energy just to do clean and jerks and not like throw the
Yeah.
bar off to the right
Yeah.
because you're so like yeah, the spinning around is pretty aggressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's
funny.
cool. We're definitely you're our horse in competition now. So this is yeah, you're carrying the tactic banner.
Yeah.
So I don't whenever I see people do really like intense CrossFit workouts, I'm like, no, I've made the right decision.
Yeah, you do. You're not like I missed that. You're
Yeah.
like I'm good.
Although like Granite Games is really fun, but it's also one of the most brutal from a programming standpoint. So I don't even know
I think it
why
would
I'm
be okay for
volunteering.
us.
I don't
'cause,
know.
like-
The worst workout I've ever done in my whole life is at Granite Games.
But there's more
Team of
running
3.
at Granite Games,
Yeah.
which is all 3 of our strengths.
That's
True
what I
story.
always like
yeah.
to see with like the in-person competitions.
Yeah.
It's like good. There's like a running event. So I'll
Lots
have
of
that.
running, lots of strongman.
Yeah.
It's Granite Games.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll pencil that in.
Yeah,
on the
I
calendar.
like
that would be really
idea.
fun.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So I guess what we're going to get into today a little bit is an area that you kind of have a lot of knowledge in. And I think is particularly relevant for the training community, both with endurance sports and then also CrossFit. And that's going to be kind of a REDS discussion.
Yep.
So maybe can you give a little bit of an introduction on what REDS is and how it fits into the broader sort of topic of like energy deficiency in training?
Yeah. So RED stands for relative energy deficiency in sport. And it was kind of expanded out of the female athlete triad. So the female athlete triad is low energy availability, low bone mineral density, and then a loss of a menstrual period. So those are the three things that kind of characterize that. And then it was kind of expanded through further research. What I found like really interesting actually is that when they were looking at male athletes, they would look at or they would research them kind of like from an overtraining perspective versus for females, they would look at it through a REDS perspective. And then they kind of converged into this one syndrome, or at least like this syndrome that it is more likely to be, not that overtraining doesn't happen. Or that REDS isn't a thing anymore. It's just that, that the athlete triad isn't a thing at all anymore. It's just that REDS is this whole like big kind of syndrome that involves, they've kind of characterized it now into like 10 physiological outcomes that can happen. So we can kind of list them or kind of discuss them as we talk through it. But basically what I'm trying to get at is that it affects both men and women. And there are so many outcomes and things that you might not even think that low energy availability would affect, or like symptoms that pop up that you might be, as a coach or as an athlete, be tempted to go down the route of chasing the symptom. So if we look at for example, the gastrointestinal effects. So you can end up with these IBS symptoms, or like gastroparesis, which is just a slowing of gastric emptying. So there's just not enough food moving through your stomach and your digestive tract, and it kind of like gets held up, and then you end up with things like acid reflux and heartburn and stuff like that. So you start trying to treat these symptoms, I guess, with like however you might do it, antacids or whatever. Or if it's like IBS, you might be starting to like do an elimination diet or take food out, and like the actual thing that the coach or the athlete needs to do is add more food, and so get more food moving through the system. When with something like an elimination diet, you might actually end up taking calories away, so you're actually exacerbating the problem. So
yeah, it's really, I think that's like kind of a counterintuitive concept. Like
Yeah.
a lot of people who are experiencing GI issues would not necessarily intuitively add more energy to the system.
Yeah.
And so then, yeah, you just end up going further down that rabbit hole, and it's like, to what end?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
That's
exactly. And then, yeah, I think like some of the other symptoms that people don't necessarily like think about, or that they like, I guess don't worry about or don't connect to food, would be maybe with like the bone mineral density issues and like the endocrine issues, and how they can kind of how they affect each other, like all of these symptoms. So I'll just like list all of the things that can possibly kind of be affected. Like I mentioned gastrointestinal. There's also cardiovascular effects, psychological, growth and development, hematological, so like blood issues, metabolic, endocrine, bone health, and then menstrual function. So all of these things, again, like endocrine and bone health. So like if from a female perspective, if your estrogen is low or your progesterone is low, that's going to affect your testosterone, which then affects your ability to like remodel your bone. So then that affects your bone mineral density. And it's all just like very intertwined. And I think a lot of times as coaches or as athletes, we might just get like really honed in on like one thing, one symptom, and fail to see kind of like the big picture and how they're all kind of, again, intertwined. And yeah, like I said, how it can be like an energy availability issue versus like specifically like an immune issue. Like you're not picking up all of these pathogens. You're just like, you have a downregulated immune system.
Yeah. We'd even like the energy intake. If you're not consuming enough energy, you have, you know, the hormonal effects that impact bone mineral density, but you're also not consuming enough calcium in the diet. So there you're having like, you know, that particular effect is kind of, you know, there's two things that are going into that at minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I just thought it was really good to touch on kind of those things. And then I guess kind of to go back to the overtraining stuff, recently Eric Helms, who's, I think you guys have maybe even mentioned him before on the podcast, but he's a researcher, mostly not bodybuilding, but I guess like
more traditional
resistance
like,
training.
Strength.
Yeah. So he and a team of researchers did a systematic review on, I think it was 21 studies that were supposed to be looking at overtraining. And so out of those 21, I think they only found 2 that were actually, they could actually definitively say like, yes, this is an overtraining syndrome. And it was like interesting to look at because the protocols that they had to put these people through to actually achieve overtraining while they were accounting for the energy availability, which is like why all of these other studies couldn't be included, was because there was this confounding variable of like, oh, these people are actually in an 800 calorie per day deficit. And that's where all of these symptoms are coming from. So like 2 of the 2 that were successful in doing it, like they worked up to a 1 RM squat on a squat machine. This is the first protocol. And then they had to replicate that 10 times. And they did that every day, I think for 2 or 3 weeks. And if they couldn't hit their 1 RM 10 times, they just decreased it by 4.5 kilos and like kept going.
Brutal.
Yeah. So that one's brutal.
Yeah.
And then the next one, so this one was by Margonis et al. And it was like even crazier. So they did like 3-week blocks of training. And they increased the intensity and they increased the volume. And they went from training like 2 days a week to 4 days a week to 6 days a week. They went from training with 70% of their 1 RM to 75 to 85 to 85 to 100% of their 1 RM. And they did this so they're doing this 6 days a week by the end. And they're doing it with the bench press, the squat, the snatch, the hang clean, the deadlift, arm curls, and rowing.
Look at her face.
How much did they pay these people to do this?
Yeah.
And like, so then like the other thing to think about with this study or with these 2 in particular is that like they lived in the lab. Like their only job was to train, and this like they reached this overtraining status. Now you take these people outside of the lab and they have kids to deal with and they have their job that they have to work and stuff. You're going to hit some of these like symptoms, even if it's not full blown overtraining. You're going to hit like sleep disruption, immune changes, hormonal dysregulation a lot earlier than these people ever would have. So yeah, I think overtraining is definitely a thing. And it's possible to do, but I think it's very often mistaken for overtraining when it's actually REDS, or at least like an energy deficiency issue. Which I thought was kind of cool because personally, I've definitely like, if you scroll down far enough on my Instagram, you'll see like a post where I'm like, well, I overtrained.
We've all done it. I need to take a break from training. It's too much.
Yeah, there's that saying that's like, there's no such thing as overtraining. There's only under eating.
Totally. Yeah.
Under recovering.
Exactly.
Yeah. So he does like, Eric Helms does say that because obviously that's kind of a bodybuilding quote. So he does bring that up, and it's like, and that was kind of the purpose of saying like, hey, these guys were like, this was their only job to do this. So, and like touching on the fact that these secondary symptoms, like again, with all of the things that are associated with REDS and as well as overtraining, they can pop up before you hit a full blown overtraining syndrome. And the definition of an actual overtraining syndrome is that the decrease in performance lasts several months.
Yeah. So it exists in the context of like overreaching, which I think is a normal thing in training. Right. And then what's the other one? Like so there's like functional overreaching, non-functional overreaching, and then overtraining syndrome.
Right. And before that there's overload, which is like overload is like just a training concept. Like you need overload in order to make progress in the gym. And then like functional overreaching is a good thing because training goes down for a period of time, but then the ultimate result is that performance goes up.
And that's the way that most, like, I would say most people who are trained and trying to peak for something like a weightlifting meet or even CrossFit, I think if it's a well-designed program, is designed in that way where there's a decline and then, okay, now you're tapering and now you're actually performing at a higher level.
Yeah, exactly. So so you go from those like two positive outcomes with overload and overreaching, and then you get into non-functional overreaching where, okay, you've had this decrease in performance and there was no resulting increase in performance.
So basically, like, whatever it was didn't work.
Yeah, pretty much. It was like either poorly programmed or you didn't do it well or you did it too long or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then the difference between the non-functional overreaching and the full-blown overtraining syndrome is just the length of time that performance is negatively impacted.
Yeah.
So it'd be several months with overtraining syndrome.
And a lot of people who probably get into that don't realize that they're into it, which is
totally
problematic.
Like keep pushing it.
They're like, I need to train harder.
Yeah.
When in reality,
Just
it's like it is training. It's also eating. But
Yeah.
That's crazy. It reminds me of, are you familiar with the Bulgarian like training method with regards to weight training?
I don't know.
It's this crazy.
I mean, it's like I've done it 10 times.
Yeah.
Well, like,
it's part
okay,
of my
well,
repertoire.
like it's not Bulgarian. Most people know what Smolov is.
Yep.
Smolov, or even there's some other ones, but that one's the most famous and it's Russian. So Bulgaria is close to Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea with the Bulgarian method, I had to Google it to make sure I had this right. It is weight training program. So snatch, clean and jerk, front squats, back squats, high pulls, overhead squats, 6 days a week, 2 to 3 times a day at 95% or higher of 1RM.
I think I have seen like people trying to do
Yeah.
this.
So it's essentially you work to
Keyword trying.
Yeah,
Yeah,
trying.
you work to a 1RM or like, a heavy single for the day every single day of the week.
Yeah.
And plenty of normal people do try that. But the thing about the Bulgarians, and it's like the Russians too, is a lot of those programs are developed for hard plateaued lifters who are also on performance enhancing drugs, because there's no way that you can recover from that. And then even like with the Olympic weightlifting, there's so much like neuromuscular involvement. Like, how on earth can you do a 1RM clean and jerk every day or snatch? Like,
when I do like close to my max, like 90%, I get like shaky and I'm like, I gotta go eat a sandwich.
It gets like a little dark.
Yeah. Like your nervous system just like it's like on the fritz.
Yeah.
It's like a sensation.
yeah.
Imagine having that every day.
Yeah,
crying.
and they do. And it's
all
one
the
thing
time.
to, like,
I would cry like, I would probably cry every day.
I mean, there's definitely like there's one thing to work up to like a heavy single for the day, but sometimes that heavy single is like 80%,
Totally.
85%.
Yeah.
Like these guys are working off of 1RMs and they're working to 95%.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I can do 95% of anything more than one day in a row. But that's just, that's a rabbit hole of the effects of PEDs, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's crazy. But yeah, tons of people do Smolov, and I'm like, what are you doing? Why
Like
would
in
you do
addition
that?
to like CrossFit class or in
Yeah.
addition to their other CrossFit workouts or
Yeah,
whatever.
I'm just gonna do Smolov.
I'll just add
like,
Smolov.
Okay, I mean,
Okay.
like, I guess you hate your life, so go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Call me when you're not sleeping.
Yeah.
Anymore.
Exactly.
But
But yeah, I think to kind of bring it back to Reds, and I think it is interesting to look at it from like through a CrossFit lens and how it might end up affecting a CrossFit athlete, because I think the way, I guess, like the culture that has been brought up in CrossFit has made it quite easy for something like Reds to occur in both like male and female athletes, because we have these ideological diets like zone and paleo, where they demonize certain foods, or they just like put a real like hard line on like how much food you should be eating for like how big you are or whatever it is with zone. I don't really know actually. Where they're like demonizing certain foods, and this is often going to be at the expense of eating enough food. Like with paleo, you can only eat so many sweet potatoes to get like the amount of carbohydrates you need. So then you get these like, if the athlete is smart, they'll be paleo, but they eat some other kind of carb, like oats or something. Like they'll add oats in. But a lot of times they'll just be like, oh, I'm doing CrossFit, so I need to follow paleo. And then they're severely under eating for the amount of exercise that they're doing.
yeah, and I think that's super common. And now, like, the last that I saw, so CrossFit had either had a health symposium or they're having it this week or next week, and they have a couple of ketogenic speakers on the speaker list, and then like they've been kind of into promoting intermittent fasting now too. Like they've posted something about it, and it's been kind of all over the CrossFit main page a few times. So now you have Paleo Zone, and also like now you're going to intermittent fast. Like that's insane. Especially for people who, you know, whether you're training at a high level or not, a lot of people in CrossFit affiliates are doing the 1 hour, they're doing extra classes, they're doing extra work on their own. And those aren't even like elite athletes. Those are people who are just, you know, trying to, I guess, speed up their progression with the training methodology. And so you're going to add these extreme dieting sort of principles on top. Like this road does not go to a good place.
No, it's not good.
No. Yeah.
Have you ever done paleo?
I actually didn't. I think I was getting into CrossFit kind of on like the tail end where people were starting to realize that paleo wasn't that great. I remember being in Australia and there were like paleo cafes.
Yeah.
So I never went full blown paleo, but I was definitely like drawn to the cafes. But yeah.
They sell like brownies that were 5 pounds each.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're made with almond butter and date.
Yeah.
And raw honey.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's insane.
It's definitely, I was in Australia while like bulletproof coffee was really big too.
Yeah.
I definitely fell into that one.
Like, I mean,
like,
Dude,
yeah,
does
put
it-
some butter in my
I've
coffee.
never had it. Does
Oh.
it taste good?
Like, I'd have to try it again now.
I've
I
only
think-
had the kind with like MCT oil in
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
not butter. I don't know if the butter tastes better.
How could anything
think
be
so.
better than milk?
like butter
or
is
cream.
good.
Yeah.
It's
I
good.
really like
It's
butter.
good on like bagels.
Yeah.
It changes the experience. I find it you like taste the coffee longer or something because of the
It's like,
fat that's in
yeah,
your
it
mouth.
like stays in your mouth.
Maybe
or
I'll try a
something.
sip one day.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We don't have MCT oil or grass-fed butter, but we'll get some.
you can get some.
Yeah, we'll ruin a cup of coffee for the sake of your experience. Yeah.
It's good at times.
Yeah, but I think that's a big problem with CrossFit generally is like, I mean, it's kind of, you know, there's a population of people who think that they should always be doing more, whether it's with training or with diet protocols, and that's a lot of the CrossFit community. And then there's, you know, a population of people who are not doing enough but think they're doing enough,
Yeah.
and that's a large portion of the rest of the population.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just interesting how, and I'm glad, like, I think a lot of the REDS research kind of, you know, it started back in maybe like 2014. I think that's when the IOC published their guidance
Mm-hmm.
on it. And then all this research has been in the past few years. So I think that's really good. I would really hope that CrossFit as an organization and other sports organizations just start to pay more attention and do a better job communicating to, you know, their athletes and their people about it, because I do think it is a problem.
And I think too, probably for a while, like what kind of probably necessitated the IOC making this kind of statement is that like nutritionists, dietitians that are like working with like these Olympic teams and stuff have been saying this for a long time. And then like they're kind of like, I was listening to this Renee McGregor. She's like a big dietitian for I think some of Great Britain's teams. And she was like, I was telling them that these girls needed to eat more, and they were saying like, no, they need to weigh this much. So basically like step aside. Like,
Yeah.
we've hired you to tell us how to get these girls to eat, but now go away because we have like medals to win and they need to be this weight.
Yeah.
So I think it's good. I think like the more research that's coming out, and the information and just like the accessibility of the information will be good. But then I also think that you're kind of fighting against like Instagram information, which is like, I think, again, like I think I've mentioned this before, definitely to you guys, like I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with like an athlete sharing their macros or like saying how many calories they eat. But I think it just needs to come with this caveat of like, this is what works for me. I am an individual athlete with like a certain amount, like a certain training age and a certain like lifestyle and whatever. And this is what works for me. Because you get, I would like not just younger athletes, like I think all athletes who want to be Tia Claire Toomey or who want to be whoever, looking at how much they eat and then trying to like emulate that, trying to copy that when it's not at all applicable to them. Like it just, it isn't going to work for them, especially like I think these younger girls where like their calorie needs are like so much higher than an adult who's like 5 feet tall, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I think I just wish, there was some kind of like, you know how when you say anything about COVID, like the little like warning, like label pops up, like if something like that could pop up for people, like this maybe doesn't apply to you.
Yeah, this could be wrong.
That would be nice.
Yeah, I think there's like this tendency. I mean, whenever you're talking about nutrition and you're talking about calories and macros, like really you're talking about it's an engineering term. They're hard numbers, and you know you'd like to think that the human being is, you know, a fixed variable, but the reality is humans are a black box, and they're a biological system, and they're super complicated. And so all of these these well understood principles go in, and then you have absolutely no idea what happens in the actual system that is the human, and there's so much that impacts, like, you know, the number of calories that a person needs. It's like, say it's lean muscle mass. It's like, what's their gut status? Like, what do they have going on in their stomach? Like, how active are they? What's their age? You know, how efficient are they at metabolizing food? Like, all of that stuff matters. And it's, you know, what some people are just more efficient than others with metabolism for a lot of different reasons, or vice versa. Like, some people just need more food, and that's totally fine.
But at the same time, like, there is error in how people report the amount of food they eat. And we've talked about this from like from a dieting perspective, where people think they need to be eating 12 or 1400 calories because when they track their food on Monday, maybe they do eat 1400 calories because they're like super aware of not eating, you know, candies, and they're super motivated and they're tracking meticulously. But then come like Thursday, Friday, and especially like Saturday, Sunday, when they don't track and they're like, oh, I ate the same that I did during the week. It's like, no, you didn't. Like, very, very unlikely. And like what we know from some of the studies are like the differences, and this might be different for high level athletes, the differences between people and their caloric needs, at least their base metabolic rates, don't vary that much.
Yeah.
I guess when you're getting to like a higher level athlete, and if depending on how much like activity is in their life, it's going to vary more. But I think the reporting issues are definitely one. I know for a fact that the majority of the CrossFit athletes I know, at least the females, do not track their food. And yet you'll hear them talking about promoting all of those other nutrition apps, like
the macro stacks,
macro stacks, RP, all these things. It's like, I know for a fact those people don't track. And I know that they don't eat, like these people just need calories. Like you're telling me, and not to get into this rabbit hole, you're telling me Tia Claire's eating 2,000 calories, like weighing her spinach? No freaking way. Well, I'm sorry.
That first video, she weighed her spinach like a psychopath, and then like went to Chipotle and they weighed nothing. Like didn't weigh the guac.
I know, it just
or
didn't make any sense.
And then she said, I'm gonna get cheese because I deserve it, or I've earned it, or something. And I'm like, really? Like you don't need to earn you can just have cheese because you like it. That's totally fine.
When we were on WOD on the Waves, and it had been a while since I like have spent any time, or even when I was on demo team, I'm not like a big eater, but I'm also on the smaller end of the CrossFit athlete. I was around some of these girls and they just pound food, and they don't care like how much is in anything, which is awesome. But I
think that messaging should be put out as like, you know, I eat a lot because I'm an athlete. Do I measure it meticulously? No. But do I keep, you know, an eye on how things are feeling in my body? Yes. And like, that's way more powerful than, you know, somebody eating like that and then saying like, I track my macros meticulously and these are my numbers. So I'm like, well, that's bullshit. Those are not your numbers.
But I also think CrossFit athletes, I think most of them have been in CrossFit for long enough to have a really good understanding of like, they've probably tried tracking. They probably have a good understanding of it. They've tried paleo, they've tried higher carb diets. So maybe they know.
Yeah. Sure.
But I think the reporting is a problem. It's not probably not accurate some of the time.
I will say that CrossFit athletes generally and people in the community, like maybe CrossFit, the organization, has a bigger responsibility of like putting out good information. But I think people are a little bit more aware of food and like what's reasonable. We get people from like kind of the the Olympic sports side of things, like people coming from like university sports, people coming from the or Olympic track, like development things, and people like things like that, super high level athletes. And I'm like, how did you make it this far as an athlete? You don't know anything at all about food. It's crazy.
No, what they do know, at least some of them, they know what the general population knows, which is like what you see on magazines. Right. Really, it's like they're convinced that you do need to eat 1,400 calories, or like you will lose weight in 10 pounds in 2 weeks. Yeah. It's like, how? But there's a lack of education there, I think.
Yeah, it's odd to me that the best athletes that this country has, or even in the U.S., like, are not provided with better information on nutrition, or any information on nutrition that I can see.
I think too, CrossFit exists on social media, and information travels very quickly and easily on social media. And there's a lot of like information about nutrition on social media, whereas like that doesn't happen in ski racing.
Yeah,
it's not happening in field hockey or whatever.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
and I think too, like I think the really popularized diet right now, if we were looking at just like magazines and stuff, would be like plant-based. It's like all of these like high level athletes are going plant-based, which is like maybe fine for some of them, but for a lot of them it's like if they're not being like super meticulous about it, they are going to run into like energy deficiency issues as well as like micronutrient deficiencies because they're not paying close enough attention.
Yeah.
So like I would say like that probably more than anything for like those types of athletes is what would be coming up now.
Yeah. I mean, your fiber intake's going way up. Like the amount of nutrients you're probably getting from your food is going way down.
Your like satiety is going to be up, so it's going to make it hard to eat enough.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, and if you're not super aware that this is happening and know what to do about it, you'll just carry on because that's what elite athletes can do until it's too late and they either get injured or, burnt out, or they get to their competition or whatever and can't perform, and then they don't understand why.
And yeah, I think that like really ties into Reds and like CrossFit, like any kind of athlete, like higher level athlete or like competitive athlete is going to be really willing and really able to push through some of these symptoms, like the like losing your period. Like when I mentioned it, when I was talking to some people this weekend about how like a lot of female athletes downplay the loss of a period because it is so convenient to just not have it. Like all of the girls in the room laughed. Like everyone just like agrees that like, yeah, it would be a lot better if we just didn't have to have this.
Yeah.
So like when you lose it, you're like, this is actually
I'll deal with
kind
this
of
later.
nice.
Yeah. I mean, like I definitely have been there. I think I lost mine for like a year and a half, maybe close to 2 years. And it's like, well, this is like, I get all the benefits of being on birth control without having to be on birth control. Like I don't have to worry about like timing. I don't really ever have premenstrual symptoms.
You still can get pregnant though.
I know.
So I'm just pointing that out. Just, somebody might.
Oh, right. Not all the benefits.
Not all of the benefits. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, like the benefits as applicable to a gay female. Yeah, and it's you. On one hand, I think as a logical and intelligent person, you understand like, okay, this is not a good thing, and I know that, but also it's like in the short term, it's serving my purpose and my goals, so I'm just gonna like decide that it's okay.
Yeah.
And the impact of that probably is, if you let it go for long enough, I mean, 2 years is relatively short, I think, in the grand scheme of things. If that scales up, I mean, like the bone mineral density is like, that's an issue that can become a real problem later in life. And like, it's not necessarily something that's easy to assess or easy to become aware of. Like, I don't think many people under the age of 30 are going to get bone scans.
Yeah.
So, what you're putting yourself in a situation where you might be impacting your like vitality and health later in life. And I think that's really not okay.
But really hard to get like a 20-year-old athlete to care about.
Yeah. Yeah. Who's like, I don't want to have it.
Yeah. Because at that point, you're still performing well. Yeah. You're likely lean.
Yeah.
Not always, but likely lean. And it's like, it's pretty sweet when you don't have to worry about your period.
Yeah. For sure.
I think the human body is pretty amazing, and you see this all the time with people who are battling like sickness and disease. Your body can retain normalcy for a really long time, and it can maintain homeostasis, and there's lots of little things that it will do until it just can't anymore. And that's like when people are really sick, like they tend to go from being like, this is fine, to like all of a sudden it's really not fine. And I'm not saying that that's how it happens with Reds or the female athlete triad, but you can feel super normal, and there can be tons of bad shit going on under the hood.
I was like crushing life. I was super lean, running, exercising. I think I was like early 20s, and I lost my period, and I went to the doctor for like a normal checkup. Yeah. And I told them, because they say, when was the date of your last period? And they like freaked out. Yeah. And one of them, and we don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but it was like, you should probably go on birth control to get your period back, which like, let's just say that's like that's a Band-Aid, and it doesn't resolve the underlying issue.
Did you know that, like when they suggested that?
Yeah. And then I ended up going to a gynecologist, like to get checked, because there could be many things. I mean, if you looked at my body, it was pretty obvious, and just like I was eating enough, but it wasn't enough to offset the amount of like running. And it was right when I had gotten into CrossFit. So it was just like a lot. And I was playing soccer and stuff. And I remember the doctor was like giving me shit about it. And she was like, well, what did you eat today? And I kind of she was kind of rude. And she was like, I can tell by the way that your arms are, like your wrists are so skinny, and like you don't eat enough. Like it's definitely a problem. Like this could happen. And sure enough, then I found myself like getting a bone scan. Yeah. And thankfully it was all normal, but she reiterated, like, if this isn't taken care of now, like you're going to have repercussions down the road. Yeah. Like for me, it came back naturally, and it came back kind of quickly. But I've had clients, who have been with me for almost a year, who like, it's like, for some people, it's over a year-long process to get it back. And for some, it's really not a good process. It requires like, and this kind of goes back to some of the psychological stuff, like it requires sometimes body weight gain, which is difficult, especially when you've been on the leaner end. And then on the other side, it's like reducing training volume. So it's like a double whammy. It's difficult.
And then I think, like with my experience, I think we touched on this in the last podcast, but that all three of us had kind of like lost our periods at one point, and mine was with bodybuilding, and there's really nothing, like it goes away, and it's like, well, I guess I'll work on getting that back after the show. Like there's nothing, you can't eat more. Like the whole purpose is to like get lean enough to get on stage. Yeah. And I think it varies so much. Like my personal experience, because I did two preps, I guess, and my personal experience was that the first one I did was considered a high fat diet. If I looked at it now, I'm sure it wasn't very high anything. 50 grams.
So you can have 10 grams carbs and 40 grams fat. They're high fat.
Yeah. And then the second one I did was low fat and high carb, and I lost my period within the first month of the second one because my fat intake was just.
How many calories were you eating?
I'd have to look at it again. I know by the end, like by the time I got on stage, it was like 1,000 to 1,100. Yeah. And like,
ouch.
Yeah.
I think I saw Dave Lipson, who's a mass, like 230-pound dude. His calorie intake going into his show coming up, or like in the final portion of his prep, was like 1,500 a day.
That is.
Did you find the second one harder?
I don't think so, so the first one I did was like clean eating. Like I ate fish and broccoli 6 times a day. Like that was my diet. Yeah. Then the second one felt a little bit easier because it was like a flexible dieting method. But then I was like if it fits your macros was really in at this time. So I was like on 1,400 calories trying to fit cereal into my macros.
I guess I eat twice a day.
Yeah. I would have like, I think a salad for lunch, but I would save up all these macros for my last meal of the day. And it would be like this, like those microwave protein cakes or
Yeah.
whatever. So I would make one of those, and then I would put like fit like 20 grams of candy like to put on top. It was just like poor choices.
Yeah.
So anyways, yeah, so I think it's just important to note too, though, that like REDs can occur, like there is no set, not really any set body fat percent. I mean, there's probably a range, but like it just varies so much, like individual to individual, that like, yes, oftentimes people who have REDs are quite lean, but you can also have REDs or just lose your period and not be very lean. And so in that case, I think the like, I guess, provided that you're not going into like a bodybuilding show, the focus really needs to be on getting that back, because at some point, if you don't have it, at some point that is going to affect your performance, whether you lose enough body fat to be light enough for gymnastics or whatever it is. Like at some point it's going to become an issue and your performance is going to be affected by it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for sure. And there's like, obviously stress plays a major role in that too.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much that can disrupt that like HPA access that is so impactful for hormonal status that, yeah. And anytime you're messing, like estrogen is like, I mean, it gets a bad rap and it really shouldn't. It's the most anabolic hormone that we have. And then obviously like, you know, lower levels of testosterone. But as soon as you, I mean, those are like, you have to have those to perform. And if you downregulate those for too long, if you have performance goals at all, you're just going to have, like, there's just no way that you can manage.
Right. Like if estrogen's affected, then testosterone's affected. And if testosterone's affected, IGF-1's affected.
Yeah.
And if that's affected, growth hormone's affected. And it just, yeah, there's just like this cascade where it's like, you maybe don't care so much about the estrogen.
Yeah.
But you care about like the outcomes of like, of how these hormones, like the downstream hormones, affect your ability to make progress.
Yeah.
But people don't quite like, I don't think they make that connection all the time.
Yeah. They kind of see things, each individual component in like, you know, isolation, and they think, okay, that's not that bad.
Yeah.
You know, at least I still have my testosterone, or I'm still producing growth hormone or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, well, maybe for now,
Yeah.
just give that a couple months and see how you feel.
Totally.
But yeah, it's super interesting, super complicated. But I know people who it takes longer than a year to get their cycle regulated again after a short amount of time. Like, it's just, but that has to be the priority. And it's hard, like the psychological impacts of saying to a really active person, like, you got to cool it, like with the activity, with the training, with the walking, with anything that's, you know, could be throwing off your energy balance. Like it's just a really like, yeah, there's definitely psychological impacts to that kind of modification. So
yeah, I think even again, like looking at the just like the secondary symptoms, like the sleep disruptions and stuff like that. Like I have a client who I worked with recently who was doing CrossFit like a fairly, I guess, like normal amount, like one class per week, or sorry, one class, 5 classes a day, or
5 classes a week.
5 classes a week.
Gone from 1 week to 5 a day.
It shouldn't have been that hard.
Yeah.
5 classes per week of CrossFit. And he was having these sleep issues, and we went down so many possible pathways for like why he might be having this. Like, is there mold in your house? Like all of these different things, just to like find out basically that like he personally, and it like his stress in his life and stuff would affect it as well. But like the like easiest variable, I guess, to change was the fact that he was doing CrossFit 5 days a week, and the intensity was too high for whatever reason, for whatever like mix of his like lifestyle factors and physiology. It wasn't working for him, and he was getting these like this secondary symptom of like not being able to sleep. So as soon as he switched his CrossFit training to more like classic like resistance training or bodybuilding type training, started sleeping 8 hours a night.
Yeah.
Like, so it's just, I think all of this is just so individual, and you can't really look at the athlete beside you or look at the girl on Instagram and what they're doing and just like copy and paste.
Yeah.
You gotta like pay attention to your own biofeedback and like everything that like take everything that you're doing in your life into account. look at kind of like your drains and charges, I think, and try to balance it out.
Yeah. And I think it's at the end of the day, even if what a person's doing, what they want to continue to do is participate in like CrossFit affiliate programming, that's totally fine. But as you train for longer and as your training age goes up, like your ability to output at a really high level, like your ability to access intensity and not have a negative impact on your life and on your recovery, that starts to decline. So I think, having a base understanding of like, what appropriate training is. And this is like one of my beefs with CrossFit is just that the intensity really gets pushed. And it's like, I'm pretty sure Glassman said like, be impressed with intensity, not volume. And like, I sort of fundamentally disagree with that, because I think people don't understand the ability to access intensity in a competition setting is dependent largely on an athlete or coach's ability to modulate like volume and intensity in training. And you don't get to access intensity in competition by accessing it every single day in training. Like what you get doing that is you get injured or sick, or you get chronically dampened, and so you can't even get to 100%. You can get to 80 to 85%, and that's going to be maximum for you. And then you have someone who maybe, when they're early in their training career, felt like they could go there all the time, and now they've been training CrossFit for 3 or 4 years and they feel like they can never go there. And it's just, all it is they haven't educated themselves, and their coaches don't understand the impact of training age and volume and intensity on someone with a higher training age than, a beginner who can adapt kind of to anything.
I think stress is highly underrated.
For sure.
And I always like to talk about how like all of the stress in your life it's in one cup, whereas some people like to think of it as like, on their own island. So like life stress, emotional stress, work stress, and then like eating stress. Like if you're in a deficit, that's stressful. Training stress. One good example, like Meredith, to speak to your point, when we do competitions, let's just take regionals, for example, which is like a 3-day event with 6 to 7 workouts across 3 days. We'll do like a mock regionals workout, like 2 or 3 weeks before when the workouts are released. So it's like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you do the workouts like in order, like you would at regionals. Monday morning, you wake up, fine. You can train on Tuesday. At regionals, you wake up on Monday morning, you wake up on Sunday morning, and you're destroyed. And you've done the exact same amount of volume, the exact same times of day, eaten the same things, but you like your legs are, excuse my language, fucked. You're back, like you're exhausted mentally. You don't even want to do the last day half the time. And it's like partially it's just like, it's like adrenaline, cortisol, all of that stuff that's like associated with higher intensity, higher stress. It has a huge impact on your body. Yeah. And that's just, the difference between training and competition, let alone all the other life stress that people are going through.
For sure. I mean, cortisol just like, it changes the way that your body accesses glycogen. So like the way that it accesses your stored energy is going to be different. And you have your cortisol's jacked for 3 days in a row. Like, what do you think's going to happen? like it's just like you're working out.
You finish regionals, you're like, I have to quit.
Yeah.
I thought
I'm
for
done.
sure.
I'll retire now.
2016 regionals, I was like, well, I guess I have to retire. Like I was so broken.
Never feel the same again.
I took the elevator so Sunday morning, 2016 regionals, I had to take the elevator down to the bottom of the hotel. It was only 3 floors. And I was like, well, I have to take the elevator because I can't go downstairs. But I have to go do 155-pound overhead squats.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's crazy what stress does. But then on an acute level, like, I mean, the mental impact of, having a really demanding job or having family demands and then also trying to get the most out of your training. I think people will have trouble differentiating between like training in ideal circumstances and training in circumstances that are not ideal. And sometimes your mood and energy in training can decline as a result of even like sitting on social media and scrolling affects your ability to train. People don't realize that.
Yeah.
I think they've done like the research with all the Stroop tests, which is a test where, what is a Stroop test? It's where it shows you a word that is a color in a different color. Yeah. So you see the word yellow, but it's actually red. And so you have to identify the color, not the word.
Yeah.
It's a really very mentally fatiguing test, and it has a profound impact on power output and endurance and mood and training. And they've seen similar impacts. They did 2 studies where they basically compared the impacts of scrolling social media before a training session to the impacts of a Stroop test, and they're quite similar. So,
which is crazy because you don't like. It seems like a relaxing thing to sit there and just like scroll through Instagram.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely not.
No.
It's probably so stimulating.
Yeah.
What's stimulating? You're looking at people doing like lifts that you can't do.
Yeah, you're like feeling so bad about yourself.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Okay, on that note,
literally everyone can snatch 200 pounds now.
Like,
I saw a 20-year-old strict press 165.
Who is that?
Somebody from Vegas.
Maybe it's not the same girl.
I'm like, excuse me?
Maybe there's 2.
Maybe there's
probably. I'm like, I made the right decision to take my exit.
I remember
You still got this, Lynsey.
Yeah, thanks.
I remember when finishing the snatch ladder in 2016 was a big deal, or 2017.
And that was two at 175 to finish.
175. I remember I finished it and I was like, boom.
I'm the strongest ever.
Yeah. Or finishing the chest to bar workout with the 185 at the end. Yeah. Like, boom. And now it's like you do 185 in a competition and you're bottom 50%. Like, well, just shoot me.
Put me down.
Yeah. We won't even talk about my snatch. But the one point that I wanted to add there is that I just find it funny when you kind of ask people. So like in our questionnaire, when we were bringing clients on, we ask them like, what is like 3 things that you find joy in, or 3 things that you find relax you. And you'll end up like asking them as you talk to them, like they're telling you that they're stressed out and whatever. And you kind of start asking them, well, what do you do to either like manage your stress, or what do you find, really helps like regulate your stress? And they'll say training, they'll say working out.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to like say like, no, that's not good. Like, it's good that you're training, but that is not like a stress reducing thing most of the time, depending what you're doing. But if it's like CrossFit classes, like that's not it.
No.
Especially depending on, like Meredith said, training age and how your output is.
Yeah.
Like somebody who's new to CrossFit who does Fran, it's like, okay, you're doing a 10-minute workout at like moderate intensity.
Yeah.
But you take somebody who's like pretty efficient with thrusters and pull-ups, they're going to crush themselves.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So
that is not stress relief.
It's definitely like a factor that needs to be taken into consideration.
Yeah. What do you think is like the number one thing that people can do that has like a positive impact on, if their goal is performance and training, like what's the number one thing that they can do to improve training outcomes?
Probably sleep enough.
Yeah.
I mean, like for sure eat enough. But eat enough, sleep enough. Probably from our conversation, like get off your phone.
Yeah.
Probably have some things that are like inherently like parasympathetic that like actually help you relax. And like I guess like meditation is not something that I've ever been able to get myself to do. But obviously the kind of outcomes and the research on it is like pretty, I think, stable as far as like positive benefits. So I'm not going to say meditation, but like something that helps you kind of get into that parasympathetic state is probably going to be very valuable for training and for anyone, for just like life.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you guys think?
I definitely think sleep is up there. I just think it has it cascades into way too many things.
Yeah.
If it's not something that's being taken care of or optimized, I just think there's a lot that's left on the table for people, even people who don't have performance goals, even people who just want to feel better and, get healthy or lose weight or whatever. Sleep has to be the number one thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with you on those.
Yeah. We all agree on sleep.
Yeah. Well, cool. Is there anything else? Like, how do you want to wrap this one up? Maybe like identify a couple of the red flags, and then like, what's the corrective if you find yourself, or you like, you worry that you might be dabbling towards reds.
Yeah. So I think for females, I think one of the first kind of like things that you can pick up on is definitely the loss of a period, and we've already talked about that, but just like taking that seriously. And then in the research, like the the recommendation, at least what was kind of stated in that review, was that you start to increase calories by 300 to 600 calories per day, and that's kind of where you start. I think like if someone were to come and work with us, I think it would probably be a little bit more individualized as far as like the set calorie intake that you would start increasing it by. But that is definitely going to be, I guess, the first step. On the male side, so looking at symptoms of low testosterone. So there's like the ADAM questionnaire, basically asks you if you're like having a certain number of morning erections in the morning and stuff like that. And so, yeah, so like paying attention to some of those early warning signs and not ignoring them would probably be the best thing to do. And then, yeah, I think obviously it's not always an energy deficiency issue. So probably starting out with just like maybe like tracking how much you're eating, or just like kind of like paying attention to it, and like asking or like seeking help from a coach, or probably from a coach, to see if like the amount that you're eating seems appropriate. Like start with that, like see if it seems appropriate to them for the amount of activity that you're doing. And if it's not, then formulate a plan to increase it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. Well, this has been a really interesting talk.
There's also a book called, excuse me, Lost. Oh crap.
No period. Now what?
No period. Now what?
Yeah.
Okay.
I personally haven't read it yet, but I know a couple of my clients who it helped them kind of get a better understanding of what has happened and how to get out of it. And one of my clients specifically said that she felt it was really helpful for her because she felt like she was kind of the only one, and this is a very common thing, and it can help knowing that there are other people who are in the same scenario as you, and it's not normal, but it's not uncommon.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Yeah, this has been, I hope people find this interesting. It's definitely not uncommon, but I don't think it's necessarily talked about to the extent that would be useful. So this has been really useful. Okay, we are going to sign off with some rapid fire questions. The same rapid fire questions that I gave Allie LeMay a couple weeks ago. So you get a head start / I said them. Yeah, so you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Lynsey Martin. It all comes down to...
I think it all comes down to finding something that you love and figuring out a way that you can do it as much as possible.
I like that one. A good day is...
Right on the same vein, one spent doing the things that you love with the people that you love.
My purpose is...
to chase and realize my potential and help others find theirs along the way.
Good one.
Thank you.
Like that needs to be on a poster. It needs to go on our website immediately. I believe that
everything works out in the end if you keep auditing and reflecting on your life, what you want and what's important. But it's also easy to float through life and not even realize that what you don't want is happening. So I think that reflection piece is really important.
Yeah, that one's really good too. Success is...
I believe it's measured in time. So the time that you're able to spend doing the things that you love to do with the people that you love. It's kind of a theme.
Yeah, I like it. It's a good theme though. I am...
grateful for where I'm at right now, but hungry for progress in all areas of my life.
Love is...
This one took me the longest. I was like, it's so broad. I don't know. I put based on communication as well as trust. It's kind of a generic answer there, but that's what I went with.
Love is Millie.
Yeah, I did think about that. A dog when you come home.
Yeah, a dog. Like that's love. That's unconditional. All right. Well, we've enjoyed this one a lot. selfishly, we just like you a lot and wanted you to sit on our couch for an hour and a half. So this has been great. If people want to follow you, how do they keep up with what you're doing?
Probably just Instagram. So I'm Lynsey Martin. So Lyns and then Martin. Yeah, probably that.
Easy.
Yeah.
Really easy.
And if you want to work with Lynsey, sign up on our website and then make a coaching request on our intake form.
Yeah.
She's taking on clients.
I am.
She's ready.
We're ready.
Well, this surely will not be the last time we have you on, but this has been a great episode. So thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you guys.